Marketer of the Day, number 458. Productivity, Influence, and Leadership. Become a better communicator and storyteller by showing vulnerability, imagery, and authenticity with Colin Boyd. Hey everyone, we're so glad you're listening with us right now today. If you're ready to live an inspired life, then this is the conversation you want to be talking or listening to. And the reason for that is because we're talking to the guy who knows all about living that inspired life. His name is Colin Boyd, and Colin helps business owners become more influential, and he loves to help them discover new levels of confidence and skill and how they communicate their ideas on any stage or platform. And whether you need to get in front of a client and pitch your product, or maybe speak at a conference or engage your followers on social media, his strategies will help you do this. So I'm excited to jump in. I hope you guys listening are excited too. Glad to be talking to you right now, Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Good to be here. Good to have this conversation. I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I expect it to be. I think it will be. So what is on your mind lately? What has you fired up?
I think for me, so just recently we moved our business from Sydney, Australia to California. We're in Newport Beach. And the thing that's really kind of got me fired up is realizing the power of when you make a mindset shift and you put a new intention out there and really hold that close to you, your world can dramatically shift in a very short period of time. And we've seen that happen, obviously, with our move and so forth, and just watching our business expand. But yeah, I've really been working hard on my mindset, and I've just noticed a lot of shifts happen in my external world because of it.
Awesome, exciting stuff. Well, I can't wait to jump in and hear all about that. So what was your mindset shift, and why the heck did you pack up and move a huge distance across the planet?
Well, moving to the US was something that my wife and I have always had on our hearts, or for at least the last 5 years. We are obviously in the professional development space. I have previously been really focused on productivity, recently moved into the persuasive communication space, which is my real passion. And we'd been running a fairly successful business in Australia, and I had a good reach. But I just knew that, there was something bigger on our lives. And so we've always had the American market on our hearts. And just recently, we joined a pretty high-level mastermind group over in the US based in Laguna Beach. And I experienced just hanging out with them and just playing at a whole new level. And I just said to my wife, we really need to make this happen. And she was probably even more on board than I was with moving. And so she was pumped to go, and we made it happen, within about 3 months or so.
Oh, wow. So you just said, why wait around for this to either happen on its own, or if you wait too long, maybe the dream will die and other things will become more important. Just take action now and get it done.
Yeah, it was really the rocking chair test. I think Tony Robbins originally brought that idea to me, where he's like, you're 90 years old sitting on your rocking chair. What are you going to regret not doing a certain thing? And I literally would visualize myself being 90 years old, sitting on my chair and going, if we didn't move to the US and give this a go, would I regret not doing that? And the answer was yes. Even if it doesn't work out, like I would still regret not at least giving it a go. And so from that, we decided, let's make it happen. And we have, so it's been good.
I love it. That's pretty powerful. It's like, if you hadn't done it, you always would have wondered what might have been. And as you said, like when you take the action, either it'll work out or it won't, but at least you'll never have to think about that middle ground of like, what if I'd done this? What if I'd done that? You did it, so now you know for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, great. So you made the move, and what other kinds of mindset shifts have been popping up in your head lately?
I think for me, one of the biggest thing that I've been really working on is realizing that your internal state, or the default emotion that you experience in your life, will be the defining factor to what you create in your life. And so, you have a look around in your environment, you see your house, you see your life, and that's reality. But really, that is just a reflection of who you've been up until that point. So it's really just a reflection of your past, as opposed to a reflection of where you're going in the future. And so realizing that when I change myself internally, my external world will change. And like obviously there's a lot of professional and personal development and experts who talk about this, but I think for the first time this year I've seen it happen just on a whole new level. Like we've seen our revenues more than double this year in our business, and I would say a lot of it has to do with not all the tactical little strategies we've used. It's actually come to fruition from an emotional and mindset shift, which has enabled us to take bigger action and enabled us to expand our thinking and just allow us to attract bigger things into our life.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like maybe the common trap that a lot of people fall into is focusing too much on the past, or maybe they have a resistance to trying new things or doing new things because of maybe empirical data that happened years and years ago. But then by like resting on our laurels and letting ourselves get stuck in that way of thinking, then maybe we'll just end up on the same like mediocre trajectory we've always been on, right? If we just base the future on the past, it's just going to be more of the past. So we need to maybe change our way of thinking. And even if we made mistakes or bad things happen in the past, that's the past. Maybe it's more about what are you going to do moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And realizing that your reality that you see, like your like right now, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my computer, I'm looking at the walls around me, and we say, that's my reality. Or even you look in the bank and you look at your bank account and you go, that's my reality. But it actually isn't your reality. What it is a reflection of your mindset, your emotional state, and your actions from your past. And so the only way to shift your reality, and we think it's so certain, our reality sometimes, we say, this is what I have in my life. But it's actually very liquid, and you can shift that quite quickly when you make the internal shifts that you need to make.
So how do we change that thinking, and what are those internal shifts that we should all be making?
Yeah, I know for me, one of the practices I've been doing is really quietening myself each day and going internally. And it's not even necessarily trying to conjure up anything. It's actually been more like letting go of the concerns and the worries that have been, my usual pattern in the past, and allowing myself to go deeper inside myself and feel that almost like my natural human spirit that is within me, and allowing myself to experience that more. And it sounds like, when I talk about this, it's so funny because it sounds so like woo woo and all fluffy. And I'm a very practical guy. Like I'm obsessed with practicality in all of my trainings that I do. But in saying that, the biggest shifts that I've found have been from me valuing the internal work just as much, or if not more, than the external work. Like, for example, you come into work and so often you want to just get into everything, start hustling and start, doing lots of activity. But I've been the biggest shift this year has been valuing spending 10 or 15 minutes just sitting in my chair and just experiencing better quality emotions, like visualizing and going internally and just experiencing a better emotional state. And just through doing that, I'm finding, things are just kind of coming my way and people are connecting with me more and so forth. Not necessarily any physical things that I'm doing.
That's amazing, and I can completely relate to that. And I also have maybe not focused on that area until a couple of years ago. And the saying that for some weird unknown reason has been popping up into my head, even though I haven't heard it in years, was the saying like, well, you should meditate a half an hour every day, but if you're busy, you should meditate for an hour. And anytime that I've
Yeah.
like woken up in the morning, like a few days ago, I was meeting with one of my coaches, and previously I'd met with my coach, and the coach gave me like a checklist of things I had to do, and I didn't have it done in time, and I woke up early the day I was meeting with my coach to get a few things knocked out. And I at first told myself, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to get right at the computer, I don't have time for anything. And even though I had a couple of hours before this meeting, I went out and took a long walk and did all those things to unplug, reset, get my head right. And if I had just jumped into that, then it would have been a false start almost. It would have been like, I thought I was doing all these things, but I'd be flying and doing things too fast and taking shortcuts and missing things. But by doing those important things first, like you said, of just kind of sitting and having that stillness, and for me, that's taking a walk and not having a phone on me and just sort of experiencing what's going on around me and slowing things down. By the time it was time to get at the computer and knock out those couple of things quickly, it felt more like I had my head right, I had more of that calmness, I was more efficient, and I didn't miss things. And I felt like I would have missed things if I had just been flying by the seat of my pants, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's just an ease to it. There's a flow to it that you can't experience if you're not valuing that. And what I've found in working with leaders all around the world is whenever if I'm doing leadership training or teaching them communication skills, or even productivity, like it doesn't matter what the area is, what I've found is that average people value activity more than thinking. Exceptional people value thinking more than activity. And I'm not talking about procrastination. I'm talking about like good quality thinking where they're strategically thinking about something or they're getting themselves in a right mindset. And it's those exceptional people that do that.
That's super interesting. And I agree completely that, like, it's easy to do activity. You could be a drive-through worker at McDonald's and not be thinking about it and just be almost a machine and just doing these tasks that are put in front of you versus thinking of new ways to solve a problem or have better strategy or
Yes.
any of those things that like the high level long term things that maybe if we're thinking about a way to solve a problem, we wouldn't have come up with the solution unless we gave ourselves adequate time to let go and let our subconscious do its thing.
Yeah, exactly, man.
So you mentioned, yeah, oh, cool, awesome, glad to be on the right track. And so as we've been talking, I've been like, dang, this guy has it all figured out. I wonder what he does for his business. And I saw in your profile that you're an NLP practitioner and a speaker and all these different things, and you teach people about leadership, communication, and productivity, like you mentioned there. So, I mean, what is your business all about, and what kind of things do you provide people?
Yeah, well, I have a few different markets that I serve. So I have some online programs. I've got 2 flagship online programs, or 3, including my wife's one. So I have one called the Productivity Academy, where basically people go through a 9-week transformational process. It's a video training program with worksheets and everything. The goal is to double their productivity in 9 weeks. And so we've had thousands of people come through that. And so that's one of my offerings. Another one that I'm doing a lot more now is around communicating persuasively. So I've got a program called the Influential Presenter. And once again, it's like a 9-week program where you learn how to shift your thinking so that you feel more confident on stage or on a Facebook Live or on a Skype call, whatever it is. And then the skills and the practicalities for actually delivering that content in a way that's engaging for your listeners and it gets them to take action. So that's kind of where I'm heading right now. And my wife also has a specialization in neuroscience and psychology. And so she has a program called eSchool, which is really all about building emotional resilience in leaders. So it's the 3 buckets would be productivity, communication, and emotional resilience. But I'm really focusing on the communication piece at the moment. That's where I'm doing a lot of work in large corporates, and then also serving a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs.
Well, great. So as far as communication, do you what's the problem with that these days? Do you see like a lot of people missing the mark or something like that?
I mean, I think, you're always going to see good communicators and poor communicators. I think more and more, if I look at the trends of how communication is going online and offline, People are wanting more and more authenticity. So they're wanting less hype. They're wanting more authenticity. When I say authenticity, I mean greater levels of vulnerability. And so it's almost like people's BS meter has really increased over the last 5 to 6 years, and so when you're communicating, if you can communicate with a level of authenticity, there's a real power to that. And it's not about breaking down and being all emotional and crying on camera. What it is you actually sharing your story and sharing it in a way that people can relate to the struggle. Because when you share a story, and I find that more and more I'm teaching people how to share their signature stories. And so, for example, when you're sharing a story, you need a certain level of vulnerability where people connect. They may not connect with the exact content. For example, you might tell a story about how you got expelled from school or something like that, and someone may not have been expelled from school, but when you share it, if you can portray the emotion of feeling abandoned, or the emotion of feeling rejected or left out, that is what they'll connect with. And so they connect subconsciously with the feeling that you're communicating through the experience of the content. And so that's how they relate. And then you share your story in a way that shows how you've overcame that challenge. Because I'll always love to encourage people to share stories where they've overcome the challenge, not just they're in the challenge. They've overcome it, and then that inspires the other person to shift their mindset, or kind of move forward. And I find that more and more storytelling is becoming a big aspect to it. I just ran a training on storytelling just recently in a Facebook. It was a Facebook group, and I think we had close to 500 people opt in to a story template that I was sharing. And this was from one little video in a Facebook group. And to me, it just said how desirable learning how to tell stories is, especially in the marketing space and communication space. So I think, people are craving authenticity. Storytelling is becoming more and more a part of it, but it's telling a story in a certain way.
Well, that's amazing stuff. And I can completely relate to maybe following some certain marketers and influencers who I keep being told are super great, and then I try to watch their videos and it just seems really, really polished, really rehearsed, really slick. But then I'm like, something's off here, and I have trouble connecting, as opposed to if someone is just being natural or maybe not as polished and rehearsed as they could be and just being themselves. I like that a lot better. And so it seems like almost like the story is what's there to hook people and disarm people, and then as it gets into the raw emotions of it, that's where the connection happens, and that's where we fill in the blanks, and then now we're really hooked. And then but it's not just about the conflict, the inciting incident, the doom and gloom. Then you're like, well, now here's how I overcame it. So then it's like there's a lesson built in. But if you just said, here's the lesson, then it might not have been as interesting, or people might not have listened, as opposed to you get in with the story first, take them on the journey, and then there's a lesson. It seems like by taking them from point A to point B is way more effective than just giving them a quick tip or something.
Absolutely. Because the story instills the emotion to take the action on the concept.
Yeah.
Because when you share a concept, it's logical, but when you share a story, it's emotional.
Right. So story plus emotion plus concept. I love it. And you mentioned that that's a Facebook group in there, and is that free for anyone to join? Do you feel like plug in the link to that here?
Oh, so like if you want to, I can definitely share with you the template for it. It was a closed Facebook group for one of my friends who runs a planning Facebook group, and so it's not really mine to share, but it's it was her a little Facebook group that she runs, and when I say little, it's pretty robust. But I'm happy to share the template and so forth with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great. Is that easy for you to spell out right now? The link to that?
Yeah, so it's just Colin Boyd, ColinBoyd.co/story.
All right, great. ColinBoyd.co/story. Well, great stuff. And so you mentioned that it's really important to have this idea of a signature story, and you've helped other people figure this out. So what's your signature story?
That's my. That's a good question. Well, when I say signature story, they're usually transformational moments in your life that has really had a big shift in your world. And so one of my transformational stories was I was at lunch during a workshop. I was actually doing some coach training, and my master trainer came up to me. Her name was Sharon, and she said, "Colin, how is your coaching business going?" So I was studying life coaching at the time, and I'm standing there eating a ham and lettuce sandwich, and she says, "Oh, how's your coaching business going?" And I said, "Oh, it's going really well. I'm really enjoying it. Loving learning how to ask questions and just connecting with people." And then she says, "How much money are you making?" And it was kind of a blunt question, and at the time, if I was honest, I wasn't making enough money to even pay for the ham sandwich that I was eating. And I told her, I said, Sharon, this is how much I'm making. It was a couple $100 a month. And she looked at me and she said, "You're making what?" There was just this look of disgust came over her face. And she said, "Colin, you've got great skills, you've got great personality, and that's what you're making?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "How old are you?" And I was 28 at the time. And she said, "Colin, you want to have kids, don't you?" And I was like, yeah, I really do." And she said, "You know what? You're going to be 30 years old and you'll have kids, but what will they have to look up to? Nothing. You are a schmuck. That's what you are. You're a dead set schmuck. You're a waste of potential." And I remember, like, at this point, I've got a bit of ham coming out of my mouth. I think a bit of lettuce had hit the ground by then. And she turns to me and she says, "Colin, what I want you to do is I want you to go out and make $30,000 in the next 3 months and call me personally." And she gave me her cell number. And I remember walking away from that situation feeling kind of, like beaten up a little bit, but really challenged. It was almost like this resolve came over me where I realized that I'd been not playing a big enough game. I'd bought into all the stories that I was telling myself that were really holding me back. And what happened was, from that decision, things started to kind of unfold over the next couple of months. And I remember getting to the end of the 3-month period and I was doing my financials, and I realized that I'd actually made $30,000 in the 3-month period from making a couple of $100 a month. And I remember I was so blown away, and I called up Sharon. I said, "Sharon, you wouldn't believe it. I literally have made $30,000. Like you said." I said, "I'm not a schmuck anymore." And she said, "I know, Colin, you always had it within you. You were just holding yourself back." And so the reason why I'm sharing that is because I think all of us have got a next level of potential, a next level of income, of influence that is already ours. But we are just holding ourselves back, usually because of the conversation or the story that we're telling ourselves about ourselves. And when we realize that we have access to that, we can step up internally and our world starts to expand and change.
Well, dang. Well, that's pretty powerful, and good thing Sharon decided to not be too polite, or decided to not sugarcoat things. Decided to be blunt with you and just like open your eyes and say, well, geez, like you can either keep farting around, or you can look to the future and say, there's got to be some urgency here. There's got to be some like reason to do things, because if you don't do things, then your future lifestyle is not going to be able to catch up to you. And so, I mean, yeah, that's pretty funny. And I imagine that when you tell that kind of story, I mean, some people are going to be as shocked as you were in that moment, as far as like, where is this going, right? She's being kind of like a downer here, but then it ended up having a happy ending. So it's like, even in that, like, it took us through that emotional arc of like, oh no, this is getting worse and worse, but then there's a light at the end of the tunnel there.
Exactly. And I'll share with you the structure of, there's 3 elements that make up a really good story. And this is actually part of what I shared in that Facebook group. So I'll share it with you now if that's all right.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So basically, in any story, there needs to be vulnerability. So, like I said before, vulnerability is like you need to be able to share with them some sort of challenge. So it's not like one day I woke up and someone came to me and said, "Hey, here's $20,000." Like that's a crap story. No one cares about that story. You share the story where you were facing the difficult situation where the friend walked out on you, or you got fired from the job, or you just faced a difficult situation. And so you share the story and the challenge, and that's the vulnerability. The second element is you talk about the tension that you experienced. So you've got the vulnerability, and then you've got the tension, and the tension is really the challenge that you went through in growing, the challenge that you went through in the experience and what that was like. And when you talk about the tension, it's drama. It's like why do people watch certain certain films or series? It's because of the drama. And so you basically want to share some drama in your story. And the third element is you have to share the victory. And so the victory is like how you overcame it. And so when you combine these three elements of some vulnerability, some tension, and then some victory, those three elements take people through the process of a really great signature story. And so with a signature story, you don't necessarily, it doesn't have to be like a life-defining moment also, because like some of my signature stories are about delivering pizzas. It's like, they seem like nothing. Another signature story I have about locking myself out of my own house after coming back from an overseas trip. And it seems like such a menial thing that, like a random thing that happens, but it actually becomes really great content when you dive into sharing the vulnerability of it, the challenge you're facing, and then how you overcame it.
Interesting, and I really like that last part there. That like it doesn't have to be something that changed your entire life. It can be something that's day to day. But then when you dig deep into the emotions that you were going through, you can make it exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's like I usually draw that into a Venn diagram, those three elements, and then the template that I referred to before is the linear structure of how to go through that. So. But yeah, those three elements is what you want to have involved in there.
Well, great. And do you notice any gotchas for us to avoid when we're crafting our kind of story? And like one thing that like I want to throw out there as an example is there was I hate to be like a downer, but there was like one particular marketer where he kept putting out stories and he was trying really well, but for some reason I wasn't really relating to this person. And I was trying to figure out why that was. And I noticed that the other people out there that I followed that told stories that involved other people. Like they'd say, well, this, like you said with Sharon, she like said the stuff to you and then that brought you into taking action. And this other person, he kept saying stories like, well, I was sitting alone in my office and I thought about this, or I was outside and I thought about that. So do you think that's an important part of it, like involving other characters, or can it work if it's just a one person story?
Yeah, well, when I think about it, I mean, most of my stories, I think I just had an epiphany then. Most of my stories do involve other people. When I think about most of my signature stories, I would say 90% of them involve other people and the interaction. So I would say yes. If you can involve another person in it, it definitely adds a dynamic to it. So, yep, 100% agree. If you can involve someone else with it, I don't think it's essential, but I definitely think that it adds a level of dynamic to the story that makes it more interesting. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, it's a good idea. So does anything specific come to mind as far as things you always see people leave out of their stories that's really essential?
Yeah, like some of the things that come up. First of all, is like if you're doing a live storytelling or a live presentation, whether it be on a stage or even on video, don't ever say, I want to tell you a story. I know I actually did that before I told my story, but that was because you invited me to tell it. But normally, I would never say, I want to tell you a story. I'll literally just go straight into the story. So even on the Facebook Live, I'll say, hey guys, hope you're doing well today. It was Tuesday morning, and I just go straight into the story. And so that's a big one. Go straight into your story. Don't tell people you're going to tell them a story. A second one is people gloss over the details too quickly. And so, they'll go, I went up the road and I grabbed this, or I was at a workshop and someone came up to me and they said, you're not going to make it in the coaching industry. And I just decided I'm going to make it. And so I went out there and I made some money. It's like they kind of gloss over all the details, where the power of the story is actually in the details. And if you study neurolinguistic programming or NLP, you understand that how we process our world is through what we see, what we feel, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell, all of the senses. And so the more vivid you can make those senses, the more visceral the story becomes. It becomes more feelings orientated when you can describe what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. And so the more you can access those senses throughout the stories at different moments, the more the listener will project themselves into the story, and they will experience the story on a deeper level.
I like that a lot. And as you were saying that, I kept thinking back to that ham and lettuce sandwich that you were eating, and the lettuce falling off the sandwich and on the floor, and that you weren't even making enough to afford that sandwich, and all those little details that it really made it stick, where it wasn't like you had to add very much, just a little bit here and there. And then as far as the people saying, I want to tell you a story, I mean, like, I hate hearing that also, because I immediately think like, oh great, this is going to be some big drawn out thing, my defenses are already up. And then even if they say, well, don't worry, I'll be quick, I'm thinking it's like there's no way to win with that. And it reminds me of like if someone puts out a blog post or an article or even an essay or something, and they say, well, the purpose of this blog post is to tell you this and this. I'm like, I don't need to know that, just jump in it and give it to me. So those are really great, really fine tunings there that I hadn't noticed that I'm totally gonna start using. And so, you've given us tons of interesting stuff to think about and chew on and to take action on. And I want to make sure that everyone knows everything about you and your business and what you have going on. So can you tell us about your websites or your offers, or just like places people should go after listening to our conversation today?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely the one that we mentioned before. So my main website is colinboyd.co, and you can grab the story template at /story. So if you just go there and grab that, that'd be great. You can also get really cool, if you're into productivity, I've got a one-page template that I use that is, I literally am looking at it in front of me right now. It's called the Daily Output Booster. And you can grab that at colinboyd.co /DOB for Daily Output Booster. It's like a one-page cheat sheet to help you get really focused each day. I love it. I've been using it for about 4 years, and it's transformed my productivity. So yeah, you probably jump in those two things. If you're interested in story or into productivity, they're probably the two places to go.
Fantastic. So once again, if you're interested in the story side of things, colinboyd.co /story. And then if you're interested in the productivity side, colinboyd.co /DOB. And my attitude with all this kind of stuff is, for some reason, whenever we've been stuck in the same way of doing things for a certain amount of time, there's always that resistance to change. And what's helped me recently is just to think, okay, if someone has a new way of doing things, there's no downside to at least being exposed to new ideas, and I might learn something, and I might even change my way of thinking. So there's no harm at all in getting some of those extra facts, getting some of that extra inspiration. So don't wait on this. If you're driving in the car listening to this, pull the car over and just write down really quick, colinboyd.co /DOB. And then once you're done, you can put that piece of paper away and get back in traffic. And then when you get home, then make sure to go to your computer. And if you're on your phone right now or whatever, just don't wait and go right now to colinboyd.co and check out what Colin has to offer you, because things change so quickly. Things are so fast paced that if we don't write that down, if we don't go to the website, if we don't opt in and claim that thing that we were given, then something else will come into place. And then you'll be like, oh yeah, what was that cool Australian guy who's in Los Angeles now and was talking about the ham sandwich and the productivity and all those things? You're going to forget about the details. So write it down, go there right now. Don't wait, colinboyd.co. And thanks, Colin, for stopping by and being vulnerable and being real with us and sharing some of these great stories and giving us this advice. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you. So thanks.
Thanks, Robert. It's been a pleasure.
What do Mark Zuckerberg, Chewbacca Mom, Michael Phelps, CNN, Fox News, BuzzFeed, Dunkin' Donuts, Chevrolet, and you have in common? Well, they all use Facebook live streaming to get more traffic and eyeballs on their websites. And to jump on the live streaming phenomenon that is taking over Facebook and the internet right now, go to videosalestactics.com to find out everything you need to know about Facebook Live.